don't have to worry about taking an AR test. You don't have to worry about anything like that. We're just gonna have fun with it. We're not gonna have to worry about anything like that. So this is the book that we're gonna read today. You guys read this one before?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. It's called The Widow's Broom. So we're gonna go over some words in it, and we're gonna go over this book a little bit. So can someone tell me the difference between fiction and nonfiction? Me.
Nonfiction is truth.
What's fiction?
Fiction is nonfiction.
Sure. Anyone else want to add to fiction and nonfiction? Yes.
Nonfiction is things that can really happen.
Mm-hmm.
And fiction is things that
Yep, that's good examples. So the way I think of it is I think of fiction as like someone's story that they came up with in their head, and nonfiction is about like real people and real events and things like that. So this book is fiction, right? But it's a special type of fiction. It's called fantasy fiction. Does anyone know what that might mean? If it's a fantasy story? Any ideas? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, it could not happen. So it's fiction, but it's got some, like really crazy stuff going on. So I made this little chart that has some things that might happen in fantasy books. So I'll read it to you because it might be hard to see. But it says there's non-human characters, so that means like talking dogs or maybe like objects that come to life. Good versus evil, sometimes they go against each other. There's imaginary places, like the Wizard of Oz, that's an imaginary place, right? There's myths, they use magic, and sometimes they even use made-up languages and made-up words and things like that. So when we're going through our story today, think about these things, and you might see some of these things in our story today. Okay?
You want to put it up there in this book, I'll get for you. So I'll put it in the movies. Okay.
Put it up on the boards and oh, and there's some words in this book that you might know them, but I'm not sure if you guys know them, so I just wanted to go over them with you real quick. The first word is widow, which is in the title. Does anyone know what a widow is? Yes. Yeah, it could be a lady, or it could be a man too. It's like someone whose husband or wife passed away, so now they're alone. So on the inside here, I put a little definition, and then I put a little person by themselves. So you can remember that. Cloaked. Do you know what it means if someone's cloaked? It's covered. That's a good idea. Yeah. So if you see something that's like a cloaked figure, it might be something that's covered. So I put another little definition. That's a little person that has a cloak on top. All right. The next word or the next phrase is draw the curtains. Who needs to draw the curtains? Are you actually drawing the curtains? No. What does that mean?
Kind of like an idiom, boys and girls. That's what we've been working on. That would be called an idiom.
Like you open up or close the curtain.
Yes. So sometimes if you want to let some light in, you would draw the curtains open, and then if you wanted to be more dark in the room, you would draw the curtains closed. So that's why I drew some curtains open in that picture. Gesture. Do you know what it means to gesture? No, that one's probably the one we haven't heard before. So if you're gesturing, you are using your hands to explain something. So if I was explaining how to make a sandcastle, I might show you with my hands and show you how I pack the sand and do things like that. So I'm gesturing. Or if I'm gesturing towards something, like, oh, you guys should look out the window. I'm using my hands to show you something. So I put the little definition. To use your hands to show or explain something, I put a little pair of hands so you guys can remember. And then slumbering. What does it mean if somebody's slumbering? Yes, go ahead. Sleeping. I always think of someone sleeping really peacefully, like they're just like really asleep and nothing's gonna bother them. So I said, when someone is sleeping peacefully, I have a little person sleeping in the bed. I'm hoping all of you were slumbering last night before you got to school today. Okay. So today when we read our book, I'm gonna read it to you guys. But when we're reading, yes, ma'am.
Can a man, when his wife has passed away, be a widower?
Yes. So yes, there's a widow and a widower. That's good. So today, when I read the story to you guys, I want you guys to do something while I'm reading it. Have you ever heard of visualizing?
Yeah.
What does it mean to visualize something? Yes.
Like, think something in your mind.
Yes, to think something in your mind. Does anyone else know what it might like? What else comes to mind when you think of visualizing?
You're picturing what you're reading.
Picturing. So I always think about pictures. So this book does have pictures in it, but that doesn't mean we can't make our own pictures in our head, right? Do some of you guys read chapter books?
Yes.
Yeah, or sometimes there's not pictures in your chapter books.
Yes.
So when you're reading, you have to visualize what's happening in your head, right? It's something that you guys do already. So what I'm going to do is when I read this to you, we're going to make some visualizations. So I'll show you what we're going to do today. So you guys are going to get a sheet that kind of looks like this, and it has 3 little spots. So when we're reading the story, I'm going to stop 3 times, and we're going to make visualizations. So you're going to write a sentence about what you visualized, and then you're going to draw a little picture about what you did. And I'll show you an example right now. So I'll read this page for you, and then I'll tell you what I'm visualizing. It says, the next morning, Mr. and Mrs. Spivey packed their dearest possessions and 8 children into their wagon. Mr. Spivey tried to convince the widow to leave with them, but she chose to stay behind her little farmhouse. She went down the road as the wagon pulled away and waved goodbye to her neighbors. You're a brave woman, Mr. Spivey called out. All right, so I just read that paragraph. So when I'm visualizing, I thought, I think of the widow saying goodbye. So I would say, the widow said goodbye. That would be my sentence. And then I would draw a little woman and maybe a wagon on the road and her waving goodbye to them. So your pictures don't have to be very artistic. You can draw stick figures and things like that, so don't worry about that. So that's what we're going to do today. And then when you make your visualizations, you're going to turn to somebody behind you or near you, and you're going to compare your visualizations with them. Because do we think everyone's going to have the same pictures in their head when we're reading? No? So we're going to compare with our partners and see how they compare, okay? Let me hand out this sheet real quick so that everyone has one. Make sure you have something to write with. All right, does everyone have one?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll leave this up so you guys kind of know what we're doing, so you have a little model there. And I'll leave our words up too, because when we get to them, we're going to talk about them. All right, are we ready? Okay. So it's called The Widow's Broom. All right. Witches' brooms don't last forever. They grow old, and even the best of them one day lose their power of flight. Fortunately, this does not happen in an instant. A witch can feel the strength slowly leaving her broom. The sudden burst of energy that once carried her quickly into the sky became weak. Longer and longer running starts are needed for takeoff. Speedy brooms that are in their youth, they outrace hawks, which pass by slow-flying geese. When these things happen, a witch knows it's time to put her old broom aside and have a new one made. On very rare occasions, however, a broom can lose its power without warning and fall with its passenger to the earth below, which is just what happened one cold autumn night many years ago. Out of a moonlit sky, a dark cloaked figure came spinning to the ground. The witch, along with her tired broom, landed beside a small white farmhouse, the home of a lonely widow named Mina Shaw. At daybreak, Widow Shaw discovered the witch lying in her vegetable garden. She was bruised and bloody and couldn't stand up on her own. In spite of her fear, and because she was a kind woman, Mina Shaw helped the witch inside and put her to bed. The witch asked Mina Shaw to draw the curtains, then wrapped herself tightly in her black cape, fell soundly asleep, and she lay there, perfectly still, all day and all evening. When she finally awoke at midnight, all her wounds had completely healed. All right, so on that page we heard our word cloaked, and what does that mean again? Cover. So we said, out of the moonlit sky, a dark cloaked figure came spinning to the ground. So we can just think a dark covered figure. And what, did you hear some other phrase that we talked about?
Draw the curtain.
Draw the curtains. So they draw them closed because she needs to be dark in there so she can sleep, right? Okay, so this first page, I want you to go ahead and make your first visualization. So that first page that we just talked about, that scene. So write a sentence about something that you visualized and then draw a quick little picture. I'll give you about a minute or 2 minutes, and then you'll share with the planner. Like I said, don't worry about your pictures. They don't have to be works of art, super masterpieces. You can draw stick figures just like I did.
I don't know how to put
Curtains. Curtains. You're welcome. You can draw whatever you want, whatever you visualize. You guys can draw whatever you visualize. So whatever you were picturing in your head when I was reading that, that's what you guys can draw. Alright, if you're finishing up your drawings, I want you to look to somebody behind you or next to you and show them your picture and talk about their picture. So you want to walk over there. So talk for a few minutes about what you drew in your picture and see what your partner did in their picture. See if they're the same or if they're different.
See yours.
Oh, is she laying down sleeping? Alright. Alright, now that you guys have shared, go back to your seat for a second. We're going to finish reading some more. And then while we're reading, make sure you're still making all those visualizations, alright? Okay. Alright, so she rose from the bed and moved silently through the widow's house. Mina Shaw was asleep in a chair by the fireplace where embers of dying fire glowed on the hearth. The witch knelt and took one of the red coals in her hand. Outside she made a fire of leaves and twigs, then dropped a strand of her hair into the flame. The fire hissed and crackled, burning with a brilliant blue light. Before long, the witch could see a dark form flying overhead. It was another witch, who circled slowly and landed beside the fire. The two women spoke briefly, the first witch gesturing toward the garden where her old broom rested. Then they sat side by side on the second witch's broom and flew off over the treetops. So we heard the word gesturing, right? What does that mean? What did we say that meant? Yes, Christian? A hand motion. So she said, the two women spoke briefly and the first witch gesturing toward the garden. So I'm imagining they were talking. She was putting her hand over to the garden to say they should go over there. All right. When Mina Shaw woke up, she wasn't surprised to find that her guest had gone. Witches, she knew, had unusual powers. It didn't surprise her either that she saw the old broom had been left behind. The widow guest had lost its magic. It was an ordinary broom handle, just like the one she kept in her kitchen. She began using it around the house and found that it was no better or worse than the brooms she's used before. One morning, Mina Shaw was still in bed when she heard a noise coming from the kitchen. She peeked in there and saw something that made her heart jump. There was a broom sweeping the floor all by itself, and it stopped for a moment and turned to the widow and then went back to work. Have you ever seen a broom sweep the floor itself?
No.
Me neither.
I wish it would. I wish it would. No, I wish I had one that would clean my
Yeah,
room.
me too. I wish it would clean my room for me. At first, Mina was frightened, but the broom seemed harmless. And what more, it's doing a very good job. Unfortunately, it swept all day long. In the evening, to get some peace, she would lock the broom in a closet. But when it tapped on the door for more than an hour, Mina felt guilty and she would let it out. As she lay in bed listening to the broom sweeping each room over and over, she wondered if it could learn to do more things. In the morning, she led the broom outside and found it was a very good student, just like you guys. And she needed to show it how to do something only once. Soon the broom would chop wood, fetch water, feed the chickens, and let them out from the pasture. It would even pick out simple tunes on the piano. Now, I've never seen a broom play the piano. I don't know if you have, but I never have.
I see the cat play piano.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my parents.
Not a week passed before the widow's neighbors, the Speedies, found out about the broom. Their farm was just down the road, the only other place around. It was one of the 8 Speedy boys who first saw the broom. When the boy told his father, Mr. Speedy ran straight across the road to the widow's house. "Is this true?" he demanded. "Did she really have a broom?" "Oh yes," Mina Shaw answered. "It's wonderful." She told her neighbor all about the broom and the witch who left it behind. Then she took him around back of the house where the broom was hard at work splitting wood. Mr. Speedy was horrified. "This is a wicked, wicked thing," he said. "This is the devil." The broom stopped working and, still clutching the axe, hopped toward the widow and her neighbor. Mr. Speedy, red-faced with anger, turned quickly and hurried home. Alright, so we're going to stop there, and we're going to make another visualization. So that part that you just read, this part, I want you to go ahead and write sentence and draw a picture about what you just heard. Yes, ma'am.
If I had a magic broom, I would not tell anybody because I would be afraid they would try to take it.
Can you write about how the broom swept the floor?
Yes, you can write about that. Whatever you picture in your head, you write that sentence about it, and you can draw a picture about it.
I don't know how to do that. No, I'll just
You guys are doing a really good job with your visualizations. I'm really liking these pictures. If you're finishing up your picture, go ahead and turn to that same person you talked to before and show them your new picture. See if your new picture is the same or if it's different.
Me and Natalie got the same picture.
Did your partners have different pictures than you?
No.
Yes.
Did anyone
No,
have the
no,
same
no, no.
pictures? Yes, you guys had same pictures, but they still looked a little different, right?
Yeah.
Even if you have the same idea, everyone has different pictures in their head. Alright. If you moved your chair, make sure you go back to your seat. And we're going to continue. Alright. Alright, you ready? Soon, more distant neighbors heard about the broom and visited the widow's farm. The men who saw it seemed to agree it was probably a wicked thing. But the wives pointed out that it was a really great help to the widow and could play the piano pretty well, considering it struck just one note at a time. No one's feelings were as strong as Mr. Speedy's. It's evil and it's dangerous, he told everyone who would listen. We will all be sorry if that thing stays around us. As the days went by, the broom seemed as innocent and hardworking as ever, though it had learned to do many things. Sweeping brought it special pleasure. It was, after all, a broom. Occasionally, when there was nothing left to do around the widow's house, it would hop down the road that separated Nina Shaw's and the Speedy's farms. The road was dirt, of course, so the broom could amuse itself for hours. One afternoon, two of the Speedy boys and their dog walked along the road where the broom was happily at work. When they saw what it was doing, they kicked the small stones the broom had swept aside back into its path. The broom ignored them and shuffled to sweep another part of the road, but the Speedy boys would not leave it alone. They called it the broom names. When it continued to ignore them, they picked up a couple of sticks and started tapping the broom's handle. Finally, it stopped sweeping. The broom turned to the two boys and knocked them both on their head so hard that they fell to the ground in tears. The broom hopped off, and the Speedy dog ran after it, yapping and biting at its bristles. "Get him!" the boys yelled. The little dog leaped into the air and caught the broom by the handle. But he wasn't there for very long. All right, now you go ahead and make your last visualization on that one. So write your last sentence and draw your last picture on that one. You guys are doing a really great job. I'm loving these sentences, and these pictures look really, really good. And again, if you finish up your pictures, go back to that partner from last time and show them your pictures and talk about what's different, what's the same, what part of the story you picked out you thought was interesting. The broom, not the boys in there. That was a funny part. Good one. What did you draw? the broom throwing the dog. Funny. And then the head. I know, I think a lot of you guys do that one. That was a funny part, wasn't it? Oh yeah? Well, that was too. That's good. I like your pictures. What did you draw? Yeah. Really? They're a little different. Yeah, your pictures are still kind of different though, even if you did choose something. I think a lot of you guys put some of the same things on there. Did you guys put something about the boys getting hit in the head with the broom? Yeah? What did you guys draw about? Yeah, we're talking about the boys being mean to the broom, or maybe the dog that went flying. I saw some pictures of those too. Alright, so everyone make sure they're back in their seats and we'll finish reading the story. Alright, eyes on me, ears on me. Alright. Now go go back to this picture. So this is what just happened. Alright. That evening, Mr. Stevie drove his wagon up to the widow's house. He was not alone. 3 men from neighboring farms were in the wagon, along with a long wooden stake and coils of wood. Mr. Stevie knocked loudly. When she opened her door, Mina was frightened by what she saw. "We've come for the broom," her neighbor told her. "It's beaten my son and has likely done worse to my dog." The poor animal was nowhere to be found. The widow could tell by their faces that the men would not be leaving without her broom. There was nothing she could do to stop them. For a moment she stood silently and then answered, "Of course, you're right. If it could do such a thing, we must get rid of it." So she led the men to the kitchen. "It sleeps here," she whispered, pointing to the closet. "If you move carefully, it will not wake it up." The men knew how strong the broom was and hoped the widow was right. They opened the closet door, revealing the slumbering broom. One of the farmers took it out and gently held it against the stake, while the others wrapped yards of rope. They carried the broom outside, drove the stake into the ground, and gathered straw around it. Mr. Speedy lit it on fire. In no time, flames turned the brooms into ashes. Life soon returned to normal around the widow's farm. The Speedies even found their dog, healthy but hungry, when he was caught in the branches of a tall tree. Then one morning, Mina Shaw called on her neighbors with frightening news. She had seen the ghost of the broom. It was as white as snow and moved through the woods at night, carrying an axe. Mr. Speedy did not believe her, but that night, under a full moon, he watched from a window as the broom's white ghost came out of the woods and slowly circled his house. The next night it returned, circling even closer, and the night after it came again, tapping the axe slightly on his door. So he said slumbering. What does slumbering mean again? Sleeping. So they said they opened the closet door, revealing the slumbering broom. So we think the broom's probably sleeping pretty peacefully in there. So this is what he saw. He saw the ghost of the broom coming around the house. Right? It's over here. It's all white.
Are witches real?
Do you think so?
No.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think that's real.
Whoa, too much.
Alright. The next morning, Mr. and Mrs. Speedy packed their dearest possessions and 8 children into their wagon. Mr. Speedy tried to convince the widow to leave with them, but she chose to stay behind in her little farmhouse. She went down to the road as the wagon pulled away and waved goodbye to her neighbors. "You're a brave woman," Mr. Speedy called out. That evening, the widow fell asleep in her chair by the fire. She'd been listening to music, simple tunes played one note at a time on the piano. A gentle tap on her shoulder woke her. She looked up and smiled at the broom, not a ghost at all, but still covered with a coat of white paint she had given it. "You play so nicely," Mina Shaw said. The broom bowed, put a log in the fire, and played another tune. Yes.
She gave the men the wrong broom.
Yeah, she did, didn't she?
Because she said it sleeps in the closet, and the broom that the witch's broom doesn't sleep in the closet. The broom, her old broom, sleeps in the closet.
You're right. So she tricked them, didn't she? Yeah. Yeah, she didn't want to get rid of it.
It was the men, the broom that did the magic.
You're right.
And she painted the magic.
Yes, you're right. Okay, so we talked about at the beginning, we'll turn this back around. We talked about fantasy, so we talked about all the things that might be in there. So what are some of these things that you saw in our story today that would make it a fantasy book?
The broom.
The broom. What was the broom doing?
It was sweeping and it was playing with piano.
I know, it was magic, wasn't it?
It was doing stuff in the
Yeah. What else?
magical object.
Magical objects. What else? The witch flying in the air. Yeah. Oh, it's okay.
The broom was using magic.
The broom was using magic.
Good and evil.
Good and evil, you're right, because those people were trying to hurt the broom, right? Did the broom do anything to them?
No.
Was the broom mean at all?
No.
No.
The
So
boys were mean.
the boys were mean to it, right? So what do you? What? Yes.
The ghost.
Oh yeah. The ghost. Yeah, that was kind of magical. So we would think the story's a fantasy, right? You don't think that a witch would really come to our house and bring us a magical broom, do you? No. Sometimes we wish, right? So the broom would sweep up for us, so we wouldn't have to clean. That's what I think. But Okay, so sometimes authors write their stories to give you a message, and so I think this author has a message that they wanted to say. What do you think the author was trying to say by writing this story? What kind of message do you think they're trying to send? You don't know? Does anyone know? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, they could be doing a funny story. Yes, Julia.
To entertain us.
To entertain us, you're right.
To
Yes.
entertain us.
Yes, to entertain us. So I think that there is maybe a little bit of a deeper message behind it. So you knew how all of those, the Speedy boys and all that, they were making fun of the broom and they were being mean to it. And like we said, was the broom being mean at all? No, so I think that maybe this author was talking about bullying a little bit. And maybe talking about how sometimes we treat people differently just because they're different from us. They didn't understand the broom, right? They didn't understand what's going on. They were just mean to it. And they didn't even get to know it really, right?
They were jealous.
They were jealous and they were being mean. So I think that's the message the author was trying to send to us today. All right, so let's go over these vocab words real quick now that we know what they were in the story. So what was a widow again? Oh, did I go ahead? Yes, so the other one's alive and they're left. So the main character in our story was Mina Shaw, and she was a widow, so that means that she's the one her husband probably passed away. Cloaked, what does it mean if something's cloaked, Elijah? Or, yeah. What does it mean if something's cloaked? Yes, something has a, so we talked about a cloaked figure, so they're talking about something that had a covering on it, it was the witch. What does it mean to draw the curtains? Go ahead. Yes, when you open and close the curtains, you're not actually like painting a picture of the curtains, you're not drawing them. Gesturing, what does it mean if we're gesturing? Yes, Madeline?
Showing or doing stuff with your hands.
Yeah, you were doing it right now when you were explaining it. You said you were gesturing with your hands or you're trying to explain something. And then slumbering, what's slumbering? Eli, tell us what slumbering is. When you're sleeping peacefully like the broom was in the closet, right? All right. You guys did a really good job with your visualizations. Thank you so much for doing that with me today. So thank you. I'll hand it over to Ms. Matthews.
Good job, boys and girls. Do you want to collect your papers or not?
Yes.